Hey guys, welcome back to Rocket Gyan, my fellow space tubers. So today is a very exciting day because first of all, today we have two consecutive launches scheduled back to back without any um, gap in between, and I need to stream all those launches. So it will be a challenge for me too, but I will try my best. So first launch we have here is of the iconic company we all know, SpaceX, giving a ride or giving a ride to the Starlink satellites to the space. And if you don't know what SpaceX is a company headed by Elon Musk, and it has revolutionized the space sector totally. um, I would say rocket sector totally, because of this rocket vehicle which you can see here, this vehicle which you can see here, and this also. I mean, and they are working for on this also. I mean, they have literally checked every box which is needed to be checked to become a successful and a futuristic space company which we can all dream of. No one would have dreamt we will be seeing something like a starship carrying around 100 tons to low Earth orbit. And yeah, that too becoming a fully reusable one. Now the dreams are coming true, and we have seen the SN15 flight. It was totally successful, and now they have recovered it, and now they must be studying it and researching it and gathering the data out of it. And yeah, that's how the things will work. Okay, so now we can have a look at the vehicle itself. If you don't know about the vehicle, we can have a look at that. So the vehicle which we are looking at today will be the Falcon 9. And before that, hi everyone. Hi, Ian Rov Gaming, Louis Smith. Hi, Train Spotter 1409. Hi, Rocket Gun. Nice to be a part of your awesome stream again. I did do some research and following up from the Rocket Lab launch earlier, and we know it failed, but the recovery part was successful, mate. Yep. I also had a I was also following that, and I had my theory why it failed. Let's hope that I'll be able to get that video out soon on my channel. So we'll see that. Hi Jessica, and let's see. Let's first of all see how the Falcon 9 operates. So first orbital class vehicle which is supposed to be reusable, 116 total launches, 59 reflown rockets, and it's a reusable rocket which is 70 meters tall, a pretty long rocket. Payload to low earth capacity is 22.8 ton in expendable configuration, and when it is used in reusable, the payload to low earth drops down to 14 to 15 tons. And yes, it can still send some uh, payload, or you can say the spacecraft, to the Mars. Elon Musk already and every time, means from the starting only, he had this dream to send things to the Mars, and we can see that from the vehicle only, this vehicle only. And I mean, uh, um, we can just think about the government organizations right now which are like dreaming to have a heavy lift launch vehicle, and SpaceX being a private company, they just started with this. Okay, the Falcon 9 was the first iteration, but that didn't had many flights, and I can say that this is their first fully designed vehicle, and they went pretty big with it. And yes, this is SpaceX. We are seeing a 100-ton launch vehicle to be made right now, and that is done by SpaceX. So no question asked. Talking about the first stage is powered by 9 Merlin 1D engines, which you can see here, and they are stacked in the octaweb configuration, which we can see here, and it produces a thrust at of 7,607 kilonewtons at the sea level, and yes, obviously it will be using this landing legs to land on the drone ship. Now talking about the second stage runs on one vacuum optimized Merlin engine, and this is a pretty big engine, and I'll tell you why. Because you can see the size of this rocket nozzle, this engine nozzle, because the space which is occupied by these 9 Merlin engines is occupied by a single Merlin vacuum engine. So that is a thing, and that's how the scale of the things work with the Falcon 9 vehicle. Now, the talking about the interstage, this has the grid fins, which actually plays a pretty important part when it comes to aerodynamic guidance once it enters the atmosphere. Then the payload, talking about the payload, payloads are the Starlink satellites. We'll talk about that in a bit. Now, talking about the Merlin engine, as it says, we have a engine which runs on gas generator power cycle, evident from this mini rocket engine from here. Whenever you see that this mini rocket engine in this, because why am I saying it has a mini rocket engine? Because this also gives some sort of exhaust coming out of it, although it does not produce much of thrust, but yeah, it plays an important role in powering the turbo pumps. So this engine runs on LOX and RP1 as its fuel. And yes, at the time when SpaceX adopted this engine running on LOX and RP1, no one was doing that. Means that fuel was also futuristic at that time, because everyone was either hydrogen and liquid oxygen, or maybe like the UDMH and NTO. And but yes, Soyuz was there, I know, but the famous rocket fuel engines were hydrogen and liquid oxygen and UDMH and NTO. So um, at that time they chose RP1 and LOX for their engines, and now we are living in 2021, and now also they are choosing a futuristic rocket fuel, which is methane and liquid oxygen. So that's how uh, this they work. And now talking about this Merlin vacuum optimized Merlin engine, we can see that mini rocket engine for this engine actually does not have a exhaust coming out of it. It is actually fed up back to the combustion chamber, because this type of configuration, when it feds up all the gases back to the combustion chamber, it keeps the temperature down, because the gases coming out of that mini rocket engines are cooler than what we have in combustion chamber. So when we fed that mini rocket engine gases to the combustion chamber, we get something which maintains the temperature. And obviously this bell is not an regeneratively cooled, but radiatively cooled. So that's how things work with the Falcon 9. Okay, now talking about the mission, here we can talk about the mission profile. Okay, the Starlink, first of all, let me tell you guys, today not only Starlink satellites are going to the space, but there are two rideshare satellites. We'll talk about that. These are the Capella satellite and Tyvek 0130. It's the thing with the Tyvek 0130 satellite is that nobody knows how it looks and what is the purpose of this satellite. This is supposed to be an astronomical observation satellite, but we don't have any further information regarding that. This is the pretty typical, the launch profile for the Falcon 9. Uh, we'll have a launch, we'll have ascent, and in midst of an ascent, we'll have the stage separation, MECO stage separation, and the second engine start. The second engine, then when it starts, it takes the payload to the intended orbit. The first stage flips around, performs a flip maneuver with the RCS thruster it is having, open up its grid fins and prepare itself for entering the atmosphere, but with retrograde position, which is nothing but facing engines first when it going down in the atmosphere. And obviously it first performs an entry burn, which slows the vehicle down to uh, you know um, slows the vehicle down to a certain level, so that it does not get burned up in the atmosphere. That plasma knife which cuts through the rocket booster, that does not play a big role, because it will be going pretty slow. And then when it has a good atmosphere to play with, the grid fins play its role, gives the aerodynamic guidance. And we have seen in many landings that grid fins have actually corrected the landing spot at the very last time. And yes, it has surely helped the Falcon 9 to land on the drone ship. And talking about the mission timeline, it's a pretty big, means pretty long mission, but we won't be streaming for that long because we have the Black Brand 12 rocket launch also scheduled for today, which I'll be streaming. So hopefully we'll be streaming till second engine cutoff, and then we'll pray that the payload deployments and the second engine start too will go as per the plan, and we can then move on to the Black Brand 12 rocket launch. Okay. Now, if you have have any questions, guys, you can ask me right now, and we can see how that looks like. The bad winds are what have been screwing the Black Brand launch. Yep, that is true. Now, talking about the payload which it is carrying are the Starlink satellites, which we can see here. We are still waiting for the SpaceX to come live. Okay, then we can discuss about this. The Starlink, have you ordered your box till now? Because this is one thing which is very, very necessary for people like me, at least, because sometimes I have to travel, and when I have to travel, I have to the launches will not, cancel when I'm traveling. So I need a proper reliable internet connection with the high speed to stream, and this thing solves that issue there. But obviously this is pretty costly, $100 a month if I'm not wrong. That's a standard which they are going in for right now. And yes, the pretty typical the today actually they are using 52 satellites, not a 60 batch satellites which they typically launch. 52 Starlink satellites and two other satellites, so that's how they will be operating today. Now this is the another satellite which is launching today, which is the Capella Spaces Sequa satellite, and I know I have pronounced it wrong, but yeah, that's how it works. It's a SAR satellite, which is nothing but it's an you can say that it's an Earth observation satellite, which will aid in disaster relief, mapping the areas for agriculture, infrastructure development, as well as security. So it has the key features for this thing is actually, you can see here, it has a 3.5-meter mesh reflector, which is pretty long, but uh, soon the most costliest Earth observation satellite will be up in space. That is a NISAR satellite, which is being developed in cooperation with ISRO and NASA. So they both are working together, and right now making the world's most expensive and most capable Earth observation satellite, which is expected to be launched in 2022. So that's how it works. And to accommodate this satellite, the Capella spacecraft, they are actually going in a circular orbit, which is not very standard ones for deployment of the Starlink satellites. But yeah, since this is a rideshare mission, they have to they take into account the customers also, obviously. So yeah. uh, and the booster supporting this mission actually is the one which has already flown 7 times right now, and this will be the 8th flight of this booster. So that would be very interesting by itself. That is the thing here. Eddie says, were you saying that there was a plasma shield for? Wait a sec. I think SpaceX are live is live, so we can have a look at that. Yeah, I can surely explain, Eddie Wolski, the plasma shield they are doing. So exactly, yes, they do have a shield, which you can say a heat shield, which they have, but they work in two ways for surviving the plasma knife. And how do they work? First of all, they perform this entry burn, which actually slows the vehicle down considerably, and it does not have that much of impact. The plasma knife does not have that much of impact on the vehicle. But then also, it needs some kind of protection, and that's where the heat shield comes in. If you look at the vehicle when it comes down to the drone ship, and then when it comes back to the port, you can actually figure out that the heat shield, which is actually near the engines, that's where it is located, it actually suffers some wear and tear, and obviously that is supposed to happen. But yeah, and talking about the grid fins are also equipped with the heat shield, so yes, they also wear off and protect the vehicle. So that's how things work in space for that thing. I hope I have answered your question right now. Range conditions appear green from other feeds. Okay, that's good to hear. The James Anderson says yes, the rocket reorients themselves, but yeah, um, it does that to protect itself from that plasma buildup when it re-enters the atmosphere. But yeah, okay. Oh, I must update the timer. Wait a sec.
And a constellation of multiple
Server
satellites that
we have.
orbit the planet at about 550 kilometers and have the potential to service the entire globe. Because Starlink doesn't rely on traditional ground infrastructure, it's ideally suited for areas of the globe where connectivity has typically been a challenge or non-existent, rural or remote communities. Tonight's launch also marks the second SpaceX rideshare mission of 2021. So instead of the 60 Starlink satellites we typically launch, tonight we'll reduce that number to 52 Starlink satellites to make room for two payloads from our customers, Capella Space and Tyvak. Capella Space is launching a synthetic aperture radar, or SAR, satellite into low Earth orbit to join its growing constellation of 24/7 all-weather Earth observation satellites. Capella's automated systems collect very high-resolution, high-speed imagery of the planet's surface. Following deployment on SpaceX's Transporter-1 mission earlier this year, the Capella constellation covered breaking global events at night and through clouds, including the Ever Given's blockage of the Suez Canal and the recent volcanic eruption on St. Vincent. Once fully commissioned, each additional satellite provides Capella's government and commercial customers with more capacity and increasingly timely SAR data. SpaceX offers multiple launch opportunities each month for small satellites to ride to space on existing low Earth orbit missions, and we're excited to have both Capella Space and Tyvak along for the ride tonight. We're currently approaching the T-minus 10-minute mark from liftoff, so with that, let's take a closer look at the rocket on your screen.
I'm Ian McCullough, a sourcing manager here at SpaceX. You're looking at a live view of Falcon 9. Our two-stage launch vehicle stands about 70 meters tall, and when it is fully fueled, it'll hold just over 1 million pounds of propellant that the vehicle will burn through in less than 3 minutes after liftoff. The bottom two-thirds of the vehicle is the first stage. Tonight will be its 8th flight and 4th flight of the year so far. The stage's maiden flight was the Crew Demo 2 about a year ago. Since then, it supported the ANASIS-II mission, CRS-21, Transporter-1, and 3 other Starlink missions. Its objective is to accelerate the vehicle through the Earth's atmosphere to space and then separate from the rest of the rocket. Once the first stage separates from the second stage, it will make its way back to Earth and target a landing on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. To give some perspective, our drone ships are the equivalent of the size of a football field, and the landing area is approximately 200 feet by 150 feet. That's big enough that a hockey rink could fit inside of it. If successful, it will mark our 84th recovery of an orbital class rocket. Above the first stage is the second stage, which has a single Merlin vacuum or MVAC engine that ignites after the first stage separates. At full power, the Merlin vacuum engine operates with the greatest efficiency for an American-made hydrocarbon rocket engine. The second stage is what will carry our Starlink satellites to orbit. At the top of the rocket, you'll also notice a large nose cone. This is called the fairing. The fairing houses the Starlink satellites and protects them until the vehicle is outside of the Earth's atmosphere, at which point the fairing separates to expose the satellites to space. Today, we will be using a flight-proven fairing, and this will be the second flight for each fairing. And we'll be attempting to recover each from the water today with our recovery vessel, Sheila Bordelon. Lastly, the large truss structure you see there is the Transporter Erector, or TE. We use it to roll the rocket out to the pad and raise it to its vertical launch position. The TE also routes the vehicle's fluids, power, and telemetry umbilicals from the ground systems to the rocket and satellites until F9 goes on internal power and clears the pad. At liftoff, it will retract in order to clear the way for Falcon 9's ascent. At T-minus 8 minutes, let's take a look at how we're progressing in the countdown.
And thank you so much,
chief
Lewis Smith,
engineer
for
held
that
a
2
technical poll at
euros.
T-minus 1 hour,
Appreciate
and the
it.
launch director
And
held
now
a
we can have
propellant
a
load
look
and launch
at
go
the
no-go
vehicle.
poll at T-minus 38 minutes. Falcon 9 has been loading propellants since T-minus 35 minutes. Our fuel is a refined form of kerosene known as rocket propellant 1, or RP1. Our oxidizer is a super chilled liquid called LOX. We chill it well below the boiling point, which densifies the LOX so we can load more of it into Falcon 9. We've also begun helium loading. The vehicle uses helium gas as a pressurant in the fuel and LOX tanks. As the Merlin engine pumps pull RP1 and LOX out of the tanks, we fill that empty volume, known as the ullage, with helium that's heated up by the engines. Heating the helium helps expand it to fill the propellant tanks. And to make sure that startup goes well, we also perform what's called engine chill. Right about now, at T-minus 7 minutes, we're flowing a small amount of that super chilled liquid oxygen into the 9 Merlin engine turbopumps. We do this to avoid any thermal shock to the system when the full flow of super chilled LOX hits the prop system. The vehicle is healthy, and we're currently tracking no issues. The range is green to support, and as for weather, beautiful shot there of our launch site. It's a gorgeous day in Florida. We were predicted 70% favorable conditions for launch, main concerns being liftoff winds and cumulus clouds around the launch site, as well as recovery zone winds, but everything is looking in bounds for now. So all systems continue to be go for a liftoff at 6:56 p.m. Eastern Time. If for some reason we don't get to launch today, we have a backup opportunity tomorrow at 6:34 p.m. Eastern.
Complete.
And
Today,
we can
more than
see
18 million
that
Americans
the
live in
timer
areas
actually
without access to
paused
high-speed
down a
internet.
bit, but we are
For many
again back to
communities
the
that historically have had poor or non-existent
countdown, which is
connections to
going
internet,
on. So yeah.
The impacts of the current pandemic made day-to-day life even more challenging. One such community that has been underserved are the residents of Eau Claire, Wisconsin. This week, the city announced that it's participating in our beta program by offering 50 rural homes and businesses Starlink connectivity. These users will now be able to access high-speed internet for work-related purposes, accessing healthcare remotely, and receiving an online education. Currently, our Starlink beta service is available in the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, Western Germany, the South Island in New Zealand, Austria, and France. And as of this week, we are excited to announce that we are now serving parts of the Netherlands. As we continue to grow our Starlink beta program and customer base, we are also building and expanding our infrastructure. Earlier this week, we announced that SpaceX will be locating our Starlink ground stations within Google Cloud data center properties in order to deliver secure and high-speed internet connectivity for our users. Locating ground stations at data centers will significantly improve latency, as data can go from the user terminal to the server without touching the internet. To learn more about Starlink, or to find out if service is available in your area, head on over to starlink.com.
We're currently at T-minus 4 minutes and 40 seconds from liftoff, and Falcon 9 is now moving into the final stages of the countdown. The next visual milestone will be retraction of the Transporter Erector, or TE. That's the white painted structure that you see there next to the vehicle. As the name indicates, that's what we use to transport the vehicle from the hangar to the pad and raise it to its vertical launch position. First, we'll see the TE clamps open. That should be coming up in just a few seconds. And then the TE will begin to retract away from the rocket slightly. At T0, the hydraulics pull the TE further away from Falcon 9 as it lifts off.
And we can
And if
see
you look
that.
closely, you can see those clamps beginning to open now. The TE provides liquids, gases, electrical connections to the second stage, as well as air conditioning to the payload fairing.
And we can see from the looks of the fairing only that the fairings have been reused today. And right now the vehicle is looking healthy and we are facing no issues as per the vehicle, and the weather is looking also good.
Falcon 9. That happens when the warm, humid Florida air comes into contact with the cold liquid oxygen. The oxygen heats up and then turns into the white gas clouds that we can start to see. The first stage will be finishing prop loading here in about 15 seconds at T-minus 3 minutes, and the second stage wraps up its prop load at T-minus 2 minutes. At T-minus 60 seconds, we'll hear the call out that Falcon 9 is in startup. This means that the rocket's autonomous internal flight computers have taken over the launch countdown. Then, just inside T-minus 2 seconds, we light the Merlin M1D engines. We use TTEB as our ignition fluid. When it mixes with oxygen, it burns a bright green colored flame, so be sure to watch out for that. We then allow the fuel...
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
All right, and there we heard the call
sure.
out that stage 1 LOX load is complete. Stage 2 continues to load its LOX. As I was saying, after we use TTEB to ignite the Merlin engines, we then allow full flow of the fuel into the thrust chambers, and then the engine comes up to power for liftoff at T0. At this point, the Starlink payload continues to be healthy. The F9 team is tracking no issues on the rocket. Weather continues to look gorgeous. And the range has cleared the surrounding ground, water, and airspace and are green for launch just 2 minutes
Guys,
from now.
weather is looking so good that I'm literally waiting for this to lift off and see all those majestic views when the rocket lifts off from the pad. And right now we can see from the vents coming, the venting only, that
Stage
the
2 LOX load is complete.
the Florida air is not very humid today, and that's why we are not able to see proper venting, the intense venting which we see usually. So if you are worried about it, that's totally nominal. And now we can see some intense venting coming out.
The rocket there on the pad, we can see some the shadow of the white clouds that are forming around the pad. Like I mentioned before, that's just the liquid oxygen vaporizing with the ambient air. Now that LOX load is complete and though that propellant line is blocked off to the vehicle, that leftover LOX in the lines basically turn into gas and form the white clouds that we see.
Exactly, they actually clear up all the pipes and the vents so that they don't have any residual
computers in
liquid
startup.
oxygen. Flight
All right,
is in
there we heard
startup,
the call
guys.
out that the flight computers are in startup. This means that the autonomous flight computer has taken over the launch countdown. And at this point, both first and second stage are beginning to pressurize for launch.
Falcon 9, Starlink LDs go for launch.
All right, there we heard our launch director give the final
30 seconds.
There we heard the launch director give our final go for launch. And at this point in time, all systems are go. Let's listen in to the terminal count and
20
watch as Falcon
seconds.
9 takes our stack of Starlink satellites and 2 ride shares into
15
space.
seconds.
Okay, guys, here we come. T minus 10.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition
Ignition.
and liftoff.
Liftoff.
Falcon 9 is pitching downrange.
This is so cool. This never gets old. We can see the vehicle right now performing a roll maneuver, and it is now pitching downwards so as to prepare itself for a gravity turn. And wow, man, wow.
As you can see, Falcon 9 has successfully lifted off from the historic launch pad 39A at Kennedy
Nominal
Space
power
Center,
and telemetry.
carrying our stack of Starlink satellites and 2 ride shares into orbit. We throttle the engines down in preparation for max Q, or maximum aerodynamic pressure. This is the largest structural load that the vehicle sees during
Vehicle supersonic.
This is the largest structural load that the vehicle sees during ascent, so slowing the vehicle down helps during that short period.
Max Q.
All right, there we heard the call out that we reached max Q. In about a minute, we're going to have 3 events happening back to back. First will be main engine cutoff, or as you'll hear it called out, MECO. This is where all 9 M1D engines shut off and slow the vehicle down in preparation for the second event, stage separation. As the name suggests, this is where the first stage separates from the second stage, with stage 1 starting to make its way back to Earth for landing on our
Started.
while stage 2 continues its journey with the third event, SES-1, or Second Engine Start 1. This is where MVAC will light up and begin to propel the second stage along with the Starlink and 2 rideshare satellites into orbit. So just a few seconds ago, we heard the call out that MVAC chill has begun. That's the same thing as what I described prior to liftoff for the M1D engines. We flow a little bit of that super chilled liquid oxygen into the turbo pump of the MVAC engine, helping to prepare the prop system for that super cold fluid to flow through.
Man, this is so cool here. And we can have a look at the MECO now. Should be happening right away. Here we have it.
So there we can see that the engine.
Stage separation confirmed.
Stage sep. And we have the ignition.
All right, so on the left-hand
of
side of your
the
screen,
second stage.
we got the first stage. And the second, on the right-hand side, the second stage, and there we heard call out MVAC ignition. We can see that nozzle begin to develop a lovely orange glow as Earth rotates in the background. And on the left-hand side, we got first stage deploying the grid fins in preparation for the drone ship landing. In just a few seconds, we're going to have fairing deploy.
Wait
Love that
for
view of
it.
MVAC. And there's our first view inside the payload fairing.
Confirmed.
There we have visual and call out there that fairing separation has occurred. As a reminder, we will be attempting to recover those fairing halves today with our recovery ship, Sheila Bordelon. And of course, we're going to be recovering the first stage with our drone ship, utilizing a view for today's recovery attempt.
And right now, the thing which you are seeing is the first stage on the left-hand side, which is rotating in the retrograde position, which is nothing but pointing their engines first to perform the entry burn. And yeah.
Make its way back to Earth. The first is the entry burn, where 3 of the Merlin 1D engines will reignite. This helps to slow the stage down as it re-enters the upper part of the Earth's atmosphere. The second burn is the landing burn, and this is a single engine burn that brings the vehicle speed down rapidly in order to land on the drone ship. We do this at the last minute to conserve as much fuel as possible. If you're just catching up with us, we had a successful launch of Falcon 9 from Kennedy Space Center's Pad 39A. On the right side of your screen, you're looking at a live view of Falcon 9 Stage 2 as it delivers our Starlink and rideshare payloads to orbit. On the left, Stage 1 is cruising back to our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You, in the Atlantic Ocean.
And in the left-hand side, in the bottom left, you can see the telemetry of the stage 1. And we can see the speed is increasing, which means it is falling back to the Earth right now. And hence, yeah, we can see the altitude also decreasing. So that's how the things work here.
Also known as latency, is much higher, resulting in poor performance for activities like video calls and online gaming.
Preparing for the entry burn to begin now.
About a minute out here from entry burn. On the left-hand see the first stage as it cruises in. Falcon 9 is equipped with 4 hypersonic grid fins positioned near the top of the first stage. The stage uses nothing but the grid fins for steering as it makes its return to Earth. They orient the rocket during reentry and guide the rocket during descent. Occasionally, you'll also see some white puffs. These are nitrogen gas bursts for attitude adjustment and control.
Exactly, the reaction control thrusters. We can see here the cold liquid nitrogen gas thrusters. And
Now we're about 20 seconds out from entry burn. As a reminder, this is a 3-engine burn that is meant to slow the first stage as it hits the thicker parts of the Earth's atmosphere.
notice the speed, guys. It is increasing, and once the engine starts, you'll see it start to decrease. So do look out that. And here we have it. Man, this is coming out to be good here. See the speed, guys. It is rapidly decreasing right now, and they are using just the 3 engines to slow itself down. Thrust of these engines are
And
massive.
stage 1 entry burn shut down.
And we just had a confirmation of stage 1 entry burn cutoff. Now we're about 60 seconds away from landing, and at this point, the vehicle is traveling around 900 miles per hour. This really puts the deceleration into perspective. In the span of less than a minute, we will have slowed from twice the speed of a jet all the way down to 0 as the rocket lands. There are a couple of events scheduled to happen in close proximity here. The stage 1 landing burn will begin and will finish its burn in about 25 seconds. And then stage 2 up in space will stop firing about 15 seconds later, at which point we'll enter the first coast period. So prepare for that in about 45 seconds.
I hope we don't get a cut in the feed here. We should be able to see some of the
Stage 1 is
effects.
transonic.
Transonic.
Got a great view of both the first stage
Mach
re-entering
1.
into the Atlantic and stage 2 as it continues on a nominal orbit.
Speed of the sound, it was crossing the speed of the sound, and now it is decreasing. The speed is continually decreasing, and we are not getting a cut at the live feed. That is so cool. Hopefully we get to
Stage
see.
1 landing burn has started.
Wow,
At
man.
a start of stage 1.
Turn
As a
on guidance.
reminder, we may lose coverage of the vehicle as it attempts to land on the drone ship.
The grid fins performing for the last minute adjustment. And we have the landing
Legs have deployed.
Landing leg deployed.
right in the bullseye. That's what we call a
Stage
good
2
landing.
FTS.
On the left-hand side of the screen, got a beautiful view of a successful landing. This marks our 84th successful recovery of an orbital class rocket and the 6th recovery of this particular booster.
Wow, man. The Seco one should be happening
Seco.
here. Okay.
And there we had second engine cutoff 1, or SECO 1.
So guys, here we have it. So we had a confirmation of a good orbit.
It's going to coast in this orbit for the next 45 minutes or so. While that happens, take a look at this animation showcasing where we are in the coast phase. We'll see you back here at T plus 54 minutes for a second stage relight and the
Acquisition of
deployment of our
signal,
2
Mr.
ride
One.
shares on board today.
How many times did this booster has landed? This booster has already landed for 7 times, and this was the 8th time which it has done it. And now we had a beautiful liftoff of this Falcon 9 vehicle, and the weather was so good, and we had some cool views on this vehicle. The second engine is still in the orbit, it has the work to do, but yes, the parking orbit is good enough right now. And yes, we didn't get the cut in the feed of the booster, which is so cool, and we were able to see how this thing just coast towards the drone ship, and at the very last moment lights up its engine, and the grid fins are always there to accommodate for the last minute changes, and boom, it hits the bull's eye every time. This is such a treat to watch, and it never gets old. So with that note, I can end this stream. I know this thing is going on, but we have another launch lined up, which is the Black Brent 12 rocket. So we should be seeing that days coming in. I need to do some you know, work for that, setting up the stream and all. So I'll meet you again in that stream. Don't go anywhere. You should be redirected to that stream only, and if you are not, you can just check out my channel, and I'll be coming live in the 5 minutes or so. So we have just a sec. Where is it? Okay, now we can end the stream. Until then, this is Priyanshu Roila. You just saw Rocket Gyan. Stay safe, stay healthy, and